Hello there. This is Kevin Wayne Johnson. I am the Chief Executive of the Johnson Leadership Group, based in Clarksville, Maryland, and the author of this series of books titled Leadership with a Servant's Heart. We want you to know better, do better, and lead better. In this world, our leaders are not delivering what the employees are looking for. And great leaders are those men and women who are able to align their subject matter expertise with their heart, being compassionate and being empathetic, and also valuing, caring, respecting, and honoring those that we are responsible for in terms of development and coaching and mentoring. So Leadership with a Servant's Heart will help you to get there. Get your copy today everywhere that books are sold. Kevin Wayne Johnson. See you soon.
Wherever you are listening or viewing from around the world, whether it's morning, it's afternoon, it's evening, we welcome you to My Journey with Paula G, where we are juggling this journey called life while we're walking in the gifts and the talents that God has given you and me. I am Paula G, and I'm your host, and I'm so glad that you have joined us. If this is your first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for embracing the journey. And if you are returning, we love you. Thank you so much for continuing to come back each and every episode. Time is precious. Life is precious. Time is the one thing that you cannot get back. So for you all, out of all of the podcasts and TV shows and radio shows that you can select to watch or listen to, you've chosen My Journey with Paula G. We are so grateful. I am grateful. Thank you so much. We keep that in mind as we are planning and crafting these shows, because my goal is at the end of the show that you have something, you've gotten a nugget, something that you can apply immediately to your daily life. So if that is you, and if that is the case, and you want to reach out and share that testimony with me, Paula at paulagvoice.com. In the subject line, you can put My Journey with Paula G. Also, we'd like to thank our underwriters, because our underwriters are the ones that provide the means for which we can air this show on not only this platform, but the variety of platforms that we are able and so blessed to share the show on. So we thank them so very much for their support and their faith in us and in this journey. And if you have a business, you have a product, you have a service, you're launching a new brand, and you'd like to gain exposure in front of a growing audience, email Jerry Royce Live, JerryRoyce Live, Live, Jerry Royce Live at gmail.com, and Paula at paulagvoice.com. Put underwriting opportunities in the subject line, and we'll be sure to follow up with you as well. Also, I encourage you, please like, share, subscribe. I am Paula G Voice across all platforms. My website is paulagvoice.com. We encourage you and we invite you to stay engaged and stay connected. So thank you all so very much. So today I want to talk with you a bit about being consistent and consistency. And I have the scripture that I want to share with you. And it comes from John 15, verse 4. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. And it's that last sentence that gets me in that verse. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. And what that speaks to me, what that says to me, is that we, as men and women of God, cannot continue to bear fruit, cannot continue to utilize our gifts unless we remain in Him, unless we stay connected to God. And that has resonated with me over the years, because I'm going to tell you the truth. There have been times where I have disconnected for one reason or another. And oh my God, did I feel the difference and had to repent and go back and reconnect. staying connected with God, being consistent with that connection, regardless of what is going on in life. And I know it is difficult sometimes. Lord have mercy. It is difficult sometimes, especially when you have calamity after calamity, you have tragedy after tragedy, one thing right after the other, or you've been prayerful about something and that prayer is not answered in the time frame that you feel it should be answered, or you've been praying for healing for a family member or friend and they pass away and you don't understand. I prayed, I fasted, I've done everything that the word and God says that I should do, and yet my family member, my friend still passed away, or the prayer wasn't answered, and some of us become discouraged and we disconnect. We disconnect. The Bible tells us that we must stay connected. We must stay connected. Sometimes there are things that occur that we have no understanding, no explanation for. And in this lifetime, we may not get that understanding, for whatever it is. But we must stay connected so we can gain that strength to keep moving forward and to keep living each and every day to the fullest. Because you know what? Sometimes Sometimes God does deliver. He may deliver in a different way, but he delivers. I remember a coworker that I worked with some years ago. He and his wife had been married for a year or two, and they gave birth to a beautiful little boy. Oh, he's the cutest little thing. Beautiful baby boy. And he was maybe about a year old, and he passed away. When I tell you that, that was one of the hardest experiences that I have had watching my colleague, because he was a good man, good person, good teacher, good father, good man of God, good husband, all of that. And this child passes away. They had been prayerful, 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 but the child passed away. This couple remained connected. They remained faithful, even in the midst of their grief of losing their son. They remain connected. They remain faithful. Fast forward to today, and we're talking almost 15, 20 years later. People tease them and say they have a basketball team because now they have about four boys, maybe four, no girls, four. So mama rules the house, right? Four boys, four thriving boys that are into sports and do all the things that boys do. Four boys. That first child can never be replaced. Never. His presence will always, his physical presence will always be missed. And his parents will always miss him and they will always love him. But God has also given them four more sons from which they can also pour love and support and so forth into. So we can never give up because we never know what God may have in store for us. We never know what God may have for us on the other side. We've got to remain consistent in our belief. We've got to remain consistent in our prayer life. And we've got to hold on because it is from God. It is from that tree of life that we gain our strength and we gain our nourishment. And we're going to take a break in a little bit, but when we come back on the flip side, I want to talk a little bit more about being consistent and how, at the time of this particular recording of this show, my journey with Paula G is coming upon its fifth year. Its fifth year of airing. And I want to share a little bit about that testimony and consistency and where we are now. And when I say we, the producer Jerry Royce Live, Positive Power 21, the Weekend Channel, where we are now and how far we have come because of the consistency, staying connected to God, staying faithful, staying connected to God, and staying focused on the vision and what it was that he spoke to Jerry over 5 years ago. So this is my journey with Paula G. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few moments.
That's what I'm talking about, Lord. Thank you.
Welcome back to my journey with Paula G, where we are juggling this journey called life while we're walking in the gifts and talents that God has given us. I am your host, Paula G, and if you're just joining us today, we are talking about consistency. And at the top of the show, let me share it again. The scripture was John 4. Was it John 4? My glasses on. John 15, my bad. John 15, verse 4. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. No branch can bear fruit by itself, which means we need each other. It must remain in the vine. So, in order for the branch or for it to bear fruit, it must remain connected to the vine. It can't do it all by itself. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. So, what that is telling us is that just like the fruit it must remain connected to the branch, to the vine, to the tree, where it draws its strength, it draws its nourishment. We must stay connected to God, where we draw our strength, where we draw our nourishment. And before the break, I was sharing a little bit about, experiences where I've disconnected personally myself, and that was not a good space to be. Never do that again. Lesson learned. The importance of staying connected to God and the importance of consistency and being consistent. And I've shared this story with you all before. The inception, is that the right word? I think so. Inception of this show, My Journey with Paula G, was a vision that was given to Jerry Royce Live, who's the CEO of Positive Power 21. We want to give him a shout out, as well as the Weekend channel. You can find all of the shows and the playback of this particular show if you miss it on the Weekend channel as well. But he was I think he said he was in the parking lot of a particular grocery store in the area that he lives. And the area was called here in the US the DMV area, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia area. And God spoke to him, gave him a vision about a TV talk show. And the TV talk show would have a certain theme each season, and each season there would be a different host. So for the pilot season, he needed someone to record the 13 episodes. And at that particular time, he had nowhere to put the shows. There was no network to put them on, nothing. He was just moving forward on this vision that God had given him. So at the time, he and I were doing a radio show together, and he asked me if I'd sort of be the guinea pig and do this pilot season, and he was just going to store it and save it. And he said, God told me to start this TV talk show, do a season of this TV talk show. I don't have anywhere to put it, don't know where it's going to go, but I'm just being obedient. And that's what he did. At the end of the weekend, because we did all the shows in one weekend, when I tell you that was fun, but it was challenging to do 13 shows in one weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that was before the pandemic. So we were still live. So I was flying up to his studio. All the guests were flying in, driving into the studio, and we were just doing show after show after show after show. And even though we have a bit transitioned because of the times and COVID, and now we're doing things a bit more remotely, I did enjoy the live interviews and being in studio with the guests and the one-on-one contact. So we did the season, and he calls me not long after that, and he said, I had this vision about the show. We're going to do 13 episodes. We do one season at a time, and I would have a different host each season. And I asked you to do the first season because I needed someone to kind of practice on, if you will. But God has told me that this is your show. This is your show. And I don't think he had the name of the show at the time. We just recorded the episodes. I don't even think he even had the name. I could be wrong. But he said, this is your show. And my journey with Paula G came to life. That was 5 years ago. When I tell you we have been through some challenges with being in studio, with getting up to the studio at the time, the logistics of all the guests getting into the studio, of myself getting to the studio, and the logistics of doing a live show on set, because we were in studio, we had a set on set, 13 episodes. There were times where, and back then I was still working in the school system, there were times where I was getting on a plane Monday morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, landing back in Atlanta about 7 or so, leaving straight from the airport, going to my school. I worked in a high school, and going to my school to start my workday. And I did that a few times. We remained consistent through the pandemic. When everything shut down, we had to kind of make a shift. We had to make a shift, and we had to begin to do things virtually, remotely. And at that point, I was introduced to Zoom. Now, I am not the most technologically knowledgeable woman on the planet. So all of that was a bit of a transition for me, and navigating through that. And when I tell you there were frustrations upon frustrations because I didn't have my camera right and my light right, and I didn't know which button to push. And Jerry's like, oh, it's too dark on this side. It's not light enough on this side. Your background's waving, all these different things. I was just ready to throw it all out the window. But I remembered the thing about being consistent and faithful, and the vision that God has given him, and that, things are not always going to be easy. We're going to have this ebb and flow and challenges, and we've got to remain consistent. So I fought my way through it. and learned how to make that transition and to learn how to then begin to produce these programs in the manner in which we are producing them. I hope at some point in time, perhaps we will get back to studio, but at the moment, this particular season, we're doing them virtually or remotely, if you will, but we're being consistent. And so now we find ourselves 5 years later, still growing strong. There are shows that were on air, different platforms, or some of that were on some of the same platforms that we're on that are no longer on. And some of the platforms that we're on, what a couple of the producers and the directors and so forth have said, your show is the only show that has lasted this. Now, to me, it's only 5 years. But being told that your show is the only show that has lasted as long as it has on this particular platform. And I'm like, wow. And you start going back and looking back and you see all the, oh yeah, I remember that show. I remember this show. I remember that show. What happened? What happened? What happened? I don't know. I can't speak for others. All I can say is staying connected to the vine, staying connected to that clear, small voice, listening to God, being obedient to what it is that he's speaking to. He spoke to Jerry about a TV talk show. Jerry was obedient and began to produce this TV talk show. God spoke to him about having one host versus different hosts. He was obedient to that. God told him to keep going. You're going to have challenges, but to keep going. And in turn, God was speaking to me as well about consistency, having faith, keeping your eye on the vision. And the vision was to continue to produce programming that inspires and I know we hear that all the time, but inspires, encourages, and motivates and pours into people and helps them to change that conversation in between their ears, that negative conversation, and creating that new narrative for themselves that they can take something each and every episode. They can take something from that episode and apply it to their lives so they can continue to move forward and be inspired and perhaps engage in some things that they may have been afraid to engage in, or continue to engage in some of those things that they have gotten discouraged because they haven't gotten results. My God, consistency. My brothers and my sisters, be consistent. When God speaks to you, when he gives you a vision and you know that it is according to his will, there are going to be challenges, there are going to be obstacles, there are going to be things that will stop you dead in your tracks. And our time has drawn near, so I don't have enough time to share with you. There are times where I was recording this show and y'all have no idea where I was because there were things juggling this journey called life. There were things that were happening in my daily life that I had to take care of, yet I still had to, produce a show each week. So I had to navigate those two things. I had to navigate those two, and that's what you have to do as well. Sometimes there are things that occur in our lives, and some of us, allow those things to just stop us dead in our tracks and forget our dreams and our goals. But we can't do that. We have to figure out a way to coexist with both of those things, because at some point you're going to be on the other side of whatever that challenge is that has stopped you dead in your tracks in the moment. We have come to the end of our journey. I could go on and on, but we have come to the end of our journey. Maybe there'll be a part two. I don't know. But I want to thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank our underwriters for their underwriting support so that we could have the means to provide this programming to you as well. Please stay connected. Like, share, subscribe. Paula G Voice across all social media platforms. PaulaGVoice.com is my website. And remember that the greatest conversation you will ever have is the one that takes place in between your ears. What are you speaking to yourself? Is God a part of that conversation? And are you listening to his still small voice? Until next time, embrace the journey.
Free, 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 free. I'm a free, 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 free. I'm a free, free, free.
family. This is Paula G, host of My Journey with Paula G. And I always get asked the same questions. How did you get started in radio? I want to start my own podcast, but I don't know how. Or, Paula, I'm going to be a guest on a radio show and I'm not quite sure what to say or how to brand myself. And then I get asked questions about how did you transform your life from who you were to who you are today? Well, I have put the answers to those questions.